I am honored to have this guest today. If you're a real estate agent, if you're a business person, if you're someone who wants to start building out a team and understanding what it really takes. I mean, we are all, including me, are in for a massive treat today. My guest is one of Toronto's leading real estate agents. And for somebody who's outside the province, outside this continent, and we have listeners right across the world now, I mean, I need you to understand, when I say one of the top real estate agents in the city of Toronto, first and foremost, Toronto has the biggest real estate board in North America. We have 65,000 real estate agents in a 50 kilometer radius. Let me say that again. In a 50 kilometer radius, we have 65,000 agents. For you to be like in the top 10, 15 in out of those agents, that's saying a lot. Okay, a lot of deals happen. I have SEHR. Thank you so much for being a guest today, first and foremost, Sarah.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you and I mean our listeners, the guys and gals that have taken their dogs for a walk on the treadmill or driving, they can't see the beautiful backdrop, which is your home. So thanks again for allowing us into your home. I know how crazy busy you are. We're going to take this conversation all over the map today. First, I mean, I definitely want to talk about how you got into real estate and the evolution of yourself. I mean, where you started out in the business, where you are now. I want to do a massive deep dive into what it takes, because we have a lot of salespeople, like a lot of real estate agents, but just salespeople in general, mortgage advisors, insurance brokers, financial advisors, business owners who watch and listen to this podcast. And so, I mean, I want you to dive into like how many years it takes to be an overnight success. But before we get into all of that, I want to take people back for a bit. Like, talk about when you came to Canada. When did you come to Canada? Why did you come to Canada? Because I know you weren't born here. So take us through that journey, Sarah.
So I was actually born in Pakistan. That's where I grew up, and that's where I went to high school. And then I went to the States for 2 years, to Boston, Massachusetts. I did 2 years of my undergrad there. And after 2 years, my dad said, you know what, like business is not good. You have to go somewhere cheaper. So I had to transfer in the middle of my university, like 2 years in, to Toronto, because that's all I could afford, because it was literally half the price. So
well, hang on, Sahir. Hey, 1 second, Sahir. Like, why did you go to Boston though? Like, why Boston? Why? Like, is that where the family? Like, why was that where you found school or business was there?
Yeah. So I went to a university called Tufts University, which was like a top 25 school. So I applied to, a lot of top schools like Harvard, Stanford. I didn't get into them. So this was the best one that I got into, which was also top 25 school. So that's where I ended up. And it was, $35,000 US a year. And 2 years in, my dad had some issues with his business, and he's like, I can't do it anymore. So I had to go wherever opportunity took me. And he's like, this is the only 18,000 I can give you, and you have to make it work for the next 2 years. So I took that money and I was like, where can I finish my education essentially? And, when I was looking into different options, Toronto was the best option for that. So I came to York University and then finished my undergrad there. The next 2 years.
And what was your undergrad in exactly? So what were you studying? Economics? Did you always, like as a kid, were you like, I want to be in economics? Like why economics? Was it watching your parents in business?
Yeah, like it was kind of like I just did what I was told to do, So the university that I went to, they were like, oh, well, I didn't want to do medicine. I didn't want to do law. So they were like, oh, why don't you get into like finance or business or economics? So that was where how that came about.
Now, did you know it?
And I dreamed to be like in economics.
I always laugh with people that the other industry that I don't think anyone grew up wanting to be was a real estate agent. We all kind of fell into the business, which we're going to talk about how you actually, because I'm always curious. And I've known, just for my viewers and listeners, I've been really lucky and blessed. And that's not an understatement to know this girl now coming up to 8 years, 9 years, watching her start in this business and then get to like watch her where she is now, it truly is. The only word that comes to my vocabulary right now is a blessing, because I see this happen all in front of my face. So if someone were to say, well, she was lucky and all that, that's all bullshit, because I watched it. I watched it happen. And so we're going to be talking about that. But Toronto for a second. You come to Toronto. You know anybody here? This is like, do you have family here? How is that? Like, what's your thought process?
The thought process was, where can I go and make this money that I have last to finish my education within North America? So this is probably the best option out there. And I came to Toronto and I fell in love with Toronto. So that's why I just ended up staying after, you know? Even staying here was a tough ride. Like when I graduated, I got a job. My first job ever, I remember I was so excited. It was like $30,000 a year at ING Direct, like nothing, you know, like peanuts. But I was so excited about my first job in North America. And then 2 days before the job was supposed to start, they said, oh, sorry, we have to cancel your job offer because we didn't realize you were an international student and you don't have your PR. So then all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, I didn't even think that would be a thing. But then I had to like go out and search for like a company that was willing to sponsor me. So that was a whole challenge, because you have to prove that you're doing a job that no other Canadian can do. So it was very tough. You know, there's not many jobs that Canadians can do.
So I know you have your MBA as well. When did that all kind of come about?
That all came about after I got my permanent residency. So I got the job that was willing to sponsor me. I worked for literally nothing. Like I was making $1,200 a month. And I was just doing it because I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be patient, exactly like how you said. Spend the 3 years that I need to spend. And, you know, I'm broke, but it's okay because I'm going to get my residency. And then I'm going to have that opportunity to stay here and actually make what I need to out of my life. So I knew even back then that this is going to be a process. And I went from being privileged growing up to having no privilege all of a sudden when my dad's business went down, and I had to just make it work, and I had to do what I had to do. So.
Well, you know what I really enjoyed, because there's a lot to unpack there. So, and I want to make sure that the viewers and listeners caught some of the stuff that resonated with me anyways. And look, I mean, if anyone's new to this podcast, I mean, at the end of the day, I do this for selfish reasons, because I'm going to get to learn a lot from SEHR's journey, her tips, her strategies. But I hope that anybody watching or listening, you're just going to be a fly on the wall on a conversation that we're having. But there was a lot to unpack. One was the fact that you said, I'm going to sit back and be patient and just worry about what's in front of me right now, which was, I just need to get my PR card. Once I get that, then I'll be able to stay here, and then I'm going to take care of the next steps, where I believe, and I would love to hear your thought process on this, where some people are like, I'm going to try to take over the whole world all in 7 days.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where you kind of, you put it into bite sizes. Like, I'm not into eating elephants, but if I was, I would eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? Like, take it nice and slow. So walk me through that kind of thought process, because I know you do that still till this day in your business, but let me just do this in chunk size.
Right. So like I said, like when I was 18, I thought, oh, the world is my oyster. Now anything that I want is going to happen. And so when I was 20, everything changed. I was like, I can't go to the school that I want to go to anymore. I was embarrassed. What am I going to tell my friends? That like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't come back because I have no money. It was embarrassing at that time as a little kid, you know? So I did that. I left. I had to come here, make new friends. I had no family here, like no resources, and just had to like kind of figure it out. Went, finished my education, got this job, and the challenges didn't stop there. So, you know, from there, I got my PR. Then I'm like, okay, what's the next step? So I was looking into employment opportunities. I said, you know what, the kind of job and the living that I want to make is not available, you know, just with an undergrad. I'm going to like take it a step further. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do at that time. And again, my parents were like, oh, doctor, lawyer, banker. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do finance now. So I went and I got an $80,000 loan from RBC to fund my MBA, because, I mean, I had to fund it myself. And then I did something that I didn't truly enjoy, but I was good at it. So I graduated with honors. And this was in 2008. I graduated in August 2008, and in September 2008 was the financial crisis. The whole world shut down. So it was very bad timing. And in hindsight, I was just kind of like back and forth from like Memphis, Tennessee, which is where my parents had moved in the interim a few years before that. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to live here. I hated it there. There was no opportunity for me. I said, this is not going to be my life. And I have to take control of my own life and set my own future for myself. So I came back to Toronto and I said, what am I going to do? All these jobs that I'm like capable of doing are no longer available to me. We're in the middle of this financial crisis. And I met some real estate agents who said, you know what, we're making a good living. And I'm like, it doesn't sound too complicated, like turning lights on and off. I think
hang on. Wait.
That was my perception back then, right? So my perception back then was like, I just spent $80,000. Like, now keep in mind, I'm $80,000 in debt at this point, right?
How old are you at this point? What's your age at that point?
26.
Holy shit! So 26 years old.
So I was like, I'm $80,000 in debt right now. What am I going to do? So I didn't want to spend too much more money educating myself. So, the barrier everybody knows the barrier to entry in real estate is very low. It just takes a few months to get your license. It's like, what, $2,000 or something? So I said, okay, like real estate agents, they're the worst, but okay, I guess I'll do it. And then I got into it, and that's when I realized I actually loved it, I didn't know that I wanted to be a realtor. I thought, let me try it out. Let me see how it works. But like from the day that I got into it, I realized this is for me. So I'm actually grateful that all the 10 years of, not 10, but like 6, 7, 8 years of hardship that I had before that led me to what's made me successful today. Because guess what? If the financial crisis hadn't have happened, maybe I would have just gotten a job at RBC and I'd still be doing that because I got comfortable. If I had come to Toronto because my parents didn't lose their business in Pakistan, I might have graduated in Boston and be doing something completely different. So, and I wouldn't be here today. So I'm actually grateful for all those failures, all those losses, because it's gotten me to where I am today. It's been stepping stones, right? So when you're at rock bottom, you got to remember that the only place to go is up. So it was great, I
want to go back because what you've been able to accomplish right now, because you've been licensed for how long as a realtor? 10 years?
9 years.
9 years. Okay. So for 9 years, off the top of my head, you're doing like close to over 500 units pretty much by yourself. And I might be wrong. I might be off because I lost track. You got to, when you started doing 250, 300 units, I was like, it's endless for this girl. She's going to be hitting thousands. Like, this is just who she is. So I lost track. But most of it, for anybody who's watching or listening right now, most of this was done on her own. I had to, her and I have been sitting together, having conversations and saying, okay, now maybe it's time for you to get like an admin person. That only happened a couple of years ago, maybe a year ago when you started. You've been doing it all on your own. So
all on my own.
Again, for anybody who's listening or watching, like I'm talking about, and who you're watching right now and who you're listening to, is somebody who's doing north of 500 transactions, majority of it on her own. But that's not where it started. And so you get into this real estate business, you decide that, okay, this is something that I like to do. It's more than just turning on and off switches. I got to say that because you said it. I got to take it back. You started with something that I've been in the business for 16 years, in case somebody is new to the podcast. And there was a couple of records this girl broke in her first couple of years, which is like, it needs to be spoken about, especially if you're in the real estate business. She did, okay? And again, just cut me off, SEHR, like if I'm wrong with some of these numbers, but I think a little over 150 to 200 in her first year. And then she backed it up.
Rentals.
She backed it up in her second year by doing rentals. Now, somebody who's not in the business would be like, well, what's the difference? And why is that such a big deal? Because to do one rental, okay, one lease deal, when a tenant says, hey, can you help me find a condo to rent? Can you help me find a house to rent? It's the exact same amount of work when if you're helping someone to buy or sell or invest in a property, but it's, 90% less in terms of how much income you're making, but the same amount of running around and the paperwork, the file that you have for that client is this thick. And she did approximately 150 a year. And then if somebody said that's a fluke, she backed it up and did it again for a second year just to shut everyone up. Okay. So for me, that's like amazing. What though took you down that path? Why did you do that? Because I've never seen anyone in my 16-year career. And if I monitor people and ask them, like as a real estate agent, there's rental companies that do that. But as a real estate agent, no one's ever done that I know. Like I'm going to say as far as North America, specifically in Canada, what the heck made you go down that path? Like why did you sit down and say, you know what, I'm going to do rentals? Because there's someone, say here, who's new in this business right now or just got their license last week. And I actually tell them, because of you, I say, get started with that. But what made you do that?
So when I was living here, I mean, listen, like I didn't grow up here. I didn't have family. So my database was like pretty much non-existent. So I had made some friends in my MBA program, but like not enough to like sustain a business or anything. So I said, listen, I have no clients. How can I build a database fast, right? And then the second thing was that I hadn't grown up here. So I actually didn't even really know the city. Until this point, I didn't have a car. So it's like I didn't even explore the suburbs or anything. I was in my little like cocoon this whole time. So like I wanted to get to know the city. I wanted to get to know the buildings. I wanted to like, gain experience. And I wanted to, build a database. So when I was doing rentals, I was meeting close to 10 people a day. If you multiply that into a year, that's like over 3,500 people a year, and then multiply that into another year. So I was meeting so many people and getting their phone numbers, their emails. And these are all people in downtown Toronto. It was mostly in downtown. They have good jobs, good credits. They're mainly young. I would say 24 to 32 would have been the age group. But guess what? Like they're on that trajectory to buy within a few years. So it's a great way to get to know the city. I probably know every building inside out way more than most other realtors just because I used to know floor plans on MLS. Like when I would see the unit number, I knew exactly what that unit even looks like. And I was able to take that knowledge and make my business efficient. Because if someone sent me 6 units to see and I'd taken them out a day before or something, I could eliminate 4 out of those already because I know all the floor plans now. So it's like I didn't even need to like really like take them to all these showings because I knew what would be the best fit. And sometimes I would tell people that. I said, oh, you send me 8, I'm going to show you 2 because I know which one you're going to like. And it would be that same one.
And you know what? And why that's so important for anybody who's listening right now, guys, gals, as a professional, as a sales professional, specifically in real estate, your job is to know the inventory. Your job is to know what the heck is out there for buyers, sellers, renters. And what you did by narrowing it down. So if a tenant called you and said, I would like to see these 6, and you say, look, those 3, I already saw those yesterday. They suck because of this, and that. Or Stephen, Nikki, you're not going to like these ones because the way that it's shaped, and it was based on the ones that you saw a couple of days ago. But let's go see these 3. That is what clients want. They want a professional that knows what the heck they're talking about and knows the information and has done the research. But I also remember, and you said it too, to make your business efficient. There was something that you told me, like, now going back 8 years ago, 7 years ago, you told me what you used to do at times. Like you used to sit at like one building and then like
house
go. What was that? I really want people who are new to understand. And if you've been in the business a long time and you're in a slump right now, a slump meaning you haven't done some sales for 4 or 5, 6 months and you're trying to get started again, here's a strategy, or what I call a hack to get started again.
Yeah, so I would actually, when I was doing rentals, my time was very, very efficient. So I wasn't taking one buyer to like 10 different units and then meeting somebody else and taking the next tenant. I would literally take other people's listings, advertise them on like Kijiji and ask them, hey, is it okay if I like show your unit and advertise it? They're like, sure. I would put a listing up and I would get 15 to 20 people show up. I'd say I'm going to be there from 5 to 6. And guess what? Somebody is going to take it and you will have a deal at the end of the day. So that's basically how I ran it. I would book maybe back-to-back open houses, 5 to 6 in this unit, 6 to 7 here. So someone who doesn't get this offer because it was a hot rental market at that time would get it at the next spot. But you have to like have more balls up in the air. So I'd have 20 people come in, the listing agent would be like, "What's going on here?" And be like, "I have a bidding war going on your rental right now," and they were like, "Great." So, and then what started happening from that is that other agents who were doing pre-construction, who had many listings in the building, saw that I could lease these places out fast and efficient. And they came to me and said, listen, like there was actually 3 people I was working with at that time. And they said, we're not even going to bother putting it on MLS. Here's the key. You go figure it out because you're so much better at this. And they didn't want to they're busy with sales. They don't want to do like paperwork for MLS data forms and all this stuff, dealing with like confirming showings. They would just say, you go rent it out. And they would still keep the listing fee and I would keep the buyer fee. Now get it rented by the end of the day. So I made it very, very efficient, essentially.
Now, when did you start to, actually, before I get into the new builds, there's something that I also wanted to unpack.
Yeah.
You were collecting people's names and numbers and emails. Yeah. You said that. And what were you doing with them? Were you putting them, I have a feeling you weren't just writing them on napkins and just deal. So what were you doing with them?
So I was using a CRM. Like right now I'd use a different one, but back then it was Stock Producer, because that's what everybody at the office was using, and just saving their information, right? And I have clients to this day that I met doing rentals who've then gone and bought a house through me, bought an investment property through me. Now I'm seeing one of the girls actually just have a baby. So it's like I'm seeing their entire life unfold, and I'm still in touch with quite a few people from back then, that I build good rapport with and so forth. So it's been a great business model at that time. And at that time, it was free. So I could, post for free. I didn't have any ad spend. You just have to sit there and grind a little bit, posting all these ads. But it was great,
Yeah,
but
look, I mean, again, I hope people caught it. You said 10 people a day over, a year, over 2 years, you're looking at close to 7,000 people. That's how you build a business. I don't care what business, in my opinion, you're in, and sales, again, really going into the micro of sales, whatever you're selling, you build it from the ground up with a strong foundation. And that's done through the people that know you. And then to take that to the next level, people that actually like you and trust you because they've done business with you. Not only will they do business again, as SEHR mentioned, she's working with a client for the 2nd, 3rd, 8th time now, especially in the world that she's in when it goes into investments, which we're going to talk about. But they start to introduce you to their friends and family, so that 7,000 that we know on an average know 200 people. If 7,000 know 200 people, your network is over 1.4 million people now that can refer you, introduce you. Think about the depth of relationships that you can build over time. And for me, it's just a reminder again, why I do these podcasts is because you kind of just kicked me in the face, because I'm like, oh, man, you know what? I forgot that part of my organization. I should be doing more rentals from the ground up. Not that I have to personally do it. I have team members. They can help me do that. But I can now start to build it out again. And so, again, I appreciate that reminder. What happened in terms of you making the shift into buys? When did you build the confidence? When it was okay, look, I've done these rental, I've done, over 300-400 rentals now in a couple of years, which is mind-boggling on its own. I'm about to make the shift now, and I'm going to make the shift. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think you made the shift directly into pre-construction, new build.
Yeah. So what ended up happening was that I asked, one of the brokers who would give me all these keys, 5, 6 in the same building. I said, how are you getting all these landlords in the same building? And, they said, oh, we sold them these units before they're built. And that was my first taste of pre-construction. I'm like, what do you mean by that? So they explained it to me. And I said, I want to come to one of these events and just watch. So this was in 2014. I remember my first sales event that I went to, it was Menkes project called the Eglinton. And, they were selling all these units in one weekend. And I said, I can find people. And the developer at that time was like, okay. And I went home and started calling these tenants and said, hey, do you know anybody who wants to like invest in real estate at Yonge and Eglinton? Like, it's a great intersection. And I gave them the entire pitch, and I found 7 people within 2 days.
Hang on. Okay, wait. 1 second, Sarah. You went back to the tenants that you had in your CRM. So, so you went directly back to them. The guys and girls in your CRM, you said, hey, do you know anybody that might want to invest?
Yes. And some of them, like parents, brothers, sisters, they were like this. Some of them even themselves, because for people who are renting, pre-construction is such a great avenue to get into the market because of the staggered payments. So some of them were like, we can't qualify for a mortgage today, but in 2, 3 years, 4 years, they'll have that job history, build their credit, save up the deposits for the 20% stretched out over 2 or 3 years. So it was actually the perfect segue into sales and to getting into like the buyer's market for them. So I was able to have great success with that for like the first year. It was all tenants. Because at that time, I didn't have much to advertise or anything. Like, it was all basically my tenants that I was selling to.
And I think I might have cut you off at that time, but you said you did in that Menkes project, you did 7 in that first one. Wow. So this is now to you.
Development that I did 25.
Okay, so now your mind's blown. Like you're like, what the heck? I've done 32 units in a short period of time. I mean, now we're talking about some serious income. Now, are you starting to? Because I know there's a man listening, there's a woman listening right now that is like wanting to get started with this, but they don't have. I think the word is confidence. That's it. The word is they don't have the confidence right now. What is that when it started to build with you? You're like, holy shit, I just did 32 units.
Yes. So basically, and I think that it was less work to do those pre-construction deals than it was to do the rentals, because there's nothing to show. Like, you're just showing them an email with floor plans and so forth. So like I saw that transition happen very, very fast, where I all of a sudden had this database of these tenants and so forth and all these projects. And it started catching on very quick. So for my second project, when the developer heard that, when I did those 27 deals, the developer next door called me and said, hey, we see that you're selling all these units here. We have a cheaper project. Come work with us. And that's how it really got going for me, where people started calling me saying, hey, we heard that you did X amount of deals in this site. Can you come and talk to us? So, from there, I just started building projects and then sticking with those and doing the high volume in those developments.
Look, I mean, I always tell people that there's a bunch of books behind me here, and I listen to podcasts and I watch videos, and a lot of people get a lot of knowledge in, but the actual power is in actually making use of that knowledge. And Dr. Martin Luther King says that you don't need to see the whole staircase, you just need to see the first step. And so some people read quotes like that, and it's inspiring for them. And they read it on a Tuesday, but then they get slapped in the face on a Wednesday, and then you just forget all that stuff. With what you did, just by asking that agent the question, hey, where do you get all these units from? And that person told you, and then you said, do you mind if I just come to the event? And you can't, like, imagine you did it. Like we talked about, if you didn't come from, if you didn't come to Toronto, and then if you didn't, get into real estate, but imagine you didn't go to that event, right? Like just taking that first step of going to the event and asking, getting outside your comfort zone. But you strike me, and in all the years I've known you, I don't think I've ever said this to you, Sarah, like you strike me as a person who's not afraid of getting outside her comfort zone. Is that mom and dad? Is that just DNA, or is that something that you worked on?
I think it was just the fact that I landed up in Canada, had my back up against the wall. I had to make it work. I'd just been through so much to get to even stay in this country. I was a different person from the time that I lived in Pakistan to the time that I had been in Canada. I have thick skin now. A no means nothing to me. And I think the main thing is in entrepreneurship, there's no ceiling, but there's also no floor, which is why so many people shy away from it, because they're afraid that they're going to, sink right through and fall, right? But there's one thing that I can say, it's you have to be very, very consistent. And I did the same thing every single day, no matter what. So it doesn't matter if it's January and it's winter and it's dead out in the rental market because, the markets have their hot months too, right? But I just did the same thing consistently every single day and showed up, and hard work beats talent all day long.
I love that. You're so right. I mean, you look at me. I mean, I don't have a lot of talent. I'm not as good at looking as any of the guests that I ever bring on. I don't have it is just putting in that work consistently. You said you did, a lot of the same stuff on a daily basis. What is it? And I have a feeling you're doing the same stuff now. Like, just for anybody who's listening, this girl hasn't stopped. Like, she just the numbers just keep on getting bigger. She just keeps on growing. And so I have a feeling a lot of the stuff that you do right now at the time of this recording in 2021 is very similar to what you did back in 2014, 7 years ago, and even further, 9 years ago. What are some of those things? Like, I know you're a very early riser. Were you always that? Okay. So what time do you usually get up? What time do you usually get up?
I would say about 6:30. I'm out of bed. At 7, I'm on my laptop.
You're boom on your laptop, and then how do you kind of structure your day? I know real estate, it takes you all over the place, but generally speaking, how do you structure your day?
So I would say for me, like 7 to 9 is like the best time for me to catch up on all my emails because the world is quiet. Like, my phone's not blowing up, people are not trying to reach me. So that's when I do like my admin stuff or organizational tasks, and then I would say after 9, I organize with my team what's going on, like the small team that I built. I touch base with my assistant with tasks for the day. Then 10 a.m., I try, if I can, go for a workout. I try and work out about 5 days a week. And that actually happens in the middle of the morning. And come back from that. And then the rest of the day is calls. And then if there's, there's appointments set up or a builder event and so forth, I do that in the afternoon. Right now, it's a lot of like Zoom meetings. And then I usually shut off by, I would say, around 7, or 8 maybe.
So you usually, so are you like sleeping by 8, 9 o'clock, or are you just kind of like winding down?
Yeah, like winding down and, like work-life balance, right? So that's kind of like my day. And then obviously I have my phone, I'm answering texts and so forth, but I'm not like physically calling clients like at night, no.
Well, I mean, I love what you do in terms of your morning from 7 to 9. Like, that's kind of like, in a funny way, it's almost like SEHR time. But during that, you're still making sure that you're focused and getting the work done consistently. First thing in the morning, you're eating the frog, so to speak, taking care of all the big stuff, and then you kind of go throughout your day. I want to shift the conversation a little bit to you personally within your investing journey. So when did you start to get comfortable to actually start investing yourself? Like, I know how many properties now
the first year that I was in real estate. So my first 50 grand that I saved from doing rentals, actually in Royal LePage Signature, they were selling a project out in like Waterloo. And I was like, I think it was like 10% down or 15% down. I can't remember, but I had 40,000 and they're like, oh, if you have 40,000, you can buy a condo. And I'm like, great. Because I was never afraid of having $0 in my bank account because I'd had that for so long before. So I'm like, I have 40,000. What am I going to do with this money? And at that time, it seemed like so much money. It was like bottles and models kind of money at that time. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to buy a condo. So I invested in a condo, which ended up getting canceled, ironically. And a year later, they gave me my money back. And then I went and I bought another condo by that time. And I'd saved more by that time. So then I ended up buying at Yonge and Eglinton, the same project I was selling at. So
now, well, I love the fact that the first time, because it got canceled, that didn't scare you the second time. You're like, okay, that happens. I'm going to jump right back in.
Yeah. So, I mean, in pre-construction, you're covered by Tarion. So it's like it got canceled. I got my money back within 5 business days. So it's not like they were holding it for months and months. It was completely hassle-free. Go pick up your check. I mean, it was unfortunate that it got canceled. It's not that the entire project got canceled. I think that there was 18 floors, and now they said there can only be 11 or 12, and my unit happened to be one of those ones that got canceled.
and obviously the one at Yonge and Eglinton, you've done very, very well for our viewers and listeners outside of the province. I mean, that's almost center ice. I mean, you're talking about a triple A location. A lot of my listeners, SEHR, are investors as well. What, just kind of like, the thousands of people that you've dealt with, what are some of the mistakes you've seen them make? In this way, my viewers and listeners know to stay away from those type of mistakes. Where have you seen investors make mistake in the strategy of new build pre-construction investing?
Yeah, I think that they just wait too long to get into the market. So a lot of times we have these new opportunities and they're like, we're going to think about it and maybe, and I need to talk to this person and that person. And they call us back 2 weeks later and either all the good units are gone or the prices have gone up 50 to 60,000. And then they've stopped themselves from buying and they say, oh, no, the price went up. And then I still say that, you know what? Today is still the best day to buy real estate because a year from now is going to go up even more. They're like, no. We're going to wait because it's going to be another good deal. And then what happens 6 months later when the next project comes up? It's even higher than the 50,000 that was being offered in the second round. But essentially, it's like people are not willing to take action fast enough because you have the 10-day cooling period in pre-construction. So it's very important for them to realize that you lock it in and it's not like resale where it's a firm deal. You still have your 10-day where you can mull it over with your family, but don't lose out on that ground floor opportunity. So that's what we try to educate our clients.
Tie up the property and then do the due diligence. Yeah. I love that. I mean, I'm sure you can attest to it, and I know you can. I mean, at 2015, 2016, we're probably at average price per square foot. Call it $600 price per square foot off the top of my head. We were all screaming, saying it's going to go up. And then it went to 700 and then 800. But every single time people thought we were on crack when we were telling them that it's going to continue to go higher. And now we sit average price point. I mean, in kind of the core of downtown, call it 1,300, 1,400. It's going to go to 2,000. Guys, it's going to go to 2,500. And I mean, SEHR, you've seen this happen thousands and numerous times over your career.
Yeah. Like, right? I mean, in 5 years, 6 years, people are like, making double their deposit, like not double their deposits, double the value of what they paid. Like myself, for example, the first condo I bought was $462,000 for a 2-bed, 2-bath at Yonge and Eglinton. This is 2014, and I look on MLS now; they're selling for like $880. You know,
you can't even get a studio. You can't get a studio for $440,000. Right?
Exactly. And what did I put down? I put down 20%, so it's a great way to leverage your money. It's the only investment vehicle where you can put down 20% and get capital appreciation on the full 100%, right? It's not like stocks where if you want to buy $100 of Apple, you got to put $100 down. So I tell people all the time, it's the perfect way to leverage yourself to be able to create that financial freedom and create a very lucrative investment portfolio in a very passive and affordable way, essentially.
I want to put you on the spot a little bit, and I'm not going to ask you for one. I'm going to say a couple or few. Give me a few little areas that you see up and coming right now that might be interesting to, where you might put some money or where you advise my listeners and viewers. And as I was joking, saying I don't want to say one because none of us really have just one, but maybe a couple of areas where you know what, I have a feeling something's going on in this part of the city. You might want to put some money in, and you can even go as far as saying outside of the city and other places in the province if you want to stretch out that far. But what are a couple of areas that are interesting you because you get a lot of stuff on your desk? Yeah,
I personally love Oakville. I'm seeing a lot of growth in the suburbs there. But to be honest, Jas, I have 12 condos and they're all over. And some of them I didn't even think about much. Like one of them, my friend bought a condo, actually one of our team members, and sent me an amendment saying that you're buying this with me. And this was at Galleria. It was a master plan community. I was like, okay. And you always just say yes. And 2 years later, you're happy you did because prices just keep going up. So I wouldn't suggest for investors to be zoned in on a certain area. It's about the value that's being provided there. And we're in a great real estate market. We have 1.2 million immigrants coming in the next 3 years. So prices are just going up and up. Each launch that comes out now shocks me. Like the price is just increasing and increasing with every development. So there's a lot of money for investors to be made, I think, in a lot of different neighborhoods.
And there's the demand is there for it, as you mentioned. I mean, we've got 1.2 million people coming into our city in the next few years, and we just don't have enough land. And so that's why you continue to see the values going up. Speaking about value, I mean, I know how much my listeners and viewers appreciate your time, and I know how busy you are. But I do definitely want you to leave my viewers and listeners with a tip or two. Like what would, with all the experience that you've been through, what would you say to a new sales person that's getting not only started in real estate, but just in sales? What would that one or two tips that you would leave them with, SEHR?
I think that it's important for people to remember that entrepreneurship is essentially a series of challenges that don't ever stop. So you have to get into it with that mindset that it is going to be tough. But the reason that we get into it because our work that we put in rewards us directly, and there is no ceiling, and you can take it to any level that you want, provided that you show up and you do the work. Everything is in your control. So be aware that it's going to be tough. You see like glamorous social media posts of people traveling, fancy cars, but the daily grind, you have to be ready for it. And you have to accept it, and you have to be happy that you have that opportunity, because without pressure, there is no business. Like, especially for me, like if I didn't have pressure today, I'm not making the money that I'm making, you know? Pressure is what creates diamonds, right? So you just have to embrace the fact that that's how it's going. That's going to be the process. But as long as I stick with it and I do the work will take care of you by default.
SEHR, you are definitely a gem. And thank you once again for everybody who's watching or listening. Go check out the episode descriptions for all of SEHR's links to her personal socials, her company, My Condo Source. We'll make sure that we have all the links. I know you're going to be coming out with a lot more content yourself. Congratulations for anybody who's watching or listening. Make sure to check out, again, her socials, which will lead you to her YouTubes and all of that stuff. Go subscribe to her channels, because you're just going to hear a lot more of not only her story, but her network and her family and her friends and everyone that she's going to be bringing to the world. And so I'm so excited to hear more from you. And once again, thank you so much for your time, SEHR.
Thanks, Jas, for having me. This was great.
Take care, girl.
Talk soon. Take care.
All right, bye.
Bye now.